Hello YouTube, welcome back to a very delayed video. I think it was May of 2016, I did a video entitled my top 10 or top 20 Sega Master System games part 1, with the expectation that part 2 was to follow. Now, I actually had partially produced a part 2, and basically the ending, the top 4 I think needed to be done, and I just never got around to doing it. It got moved onto different laptops, different devices, and then I lost some of the files and all this sort of problems, so I just never got it done. I decided now, okay, look, I am never going to go and do a nicely produced video with gameplay and all that sort of stuff. Let's just finish off the top 10 and give some closure to something, because I've been asked about it a few times and I was thinking, yeah, I should really go and finish that. Let's go and finish off from 10 to 1 today. So at number 10, we have, perhaps people might have expected this to be a bit higher, Phantasy Star. Now, Phantasy Star is not my cup of tea. I wasn't the biggest guy for RPGs and that type of stuff. Nevertheless, from a technical standpoint, it's absolutely amazing. I mean, the kind of smooth kind of dungeon crawling, big open world, battery backup, of course, more evolved story than what you would typically have gotten in any 8-bit game at the time, certainly on the consoles. Compare this to like Final Fantasy, it's night and day. Phantasy Star is far better. It has a lot of the rough edges, you have to grind a lot and all that sort of stuff. And to be honest, if you're going to play today, the best version to play is probably on the Switch, where they've done a Sega Ages re-release, and it's very true to the Master System original, but it has some niceties in terms of mapping and leveling and stuff like that. So it is absolutely well worth playing this game, but perhaps not on the Master System. And said that, if you are collecting Master System stuff, definitely one to look out for. Probably not the easiest to pick up now, because everyone kind of knows about it, and it is one of the kind of, despite the fact it's not rare, it is one of those titles that does command a little bit more money now because of its title, but nevertheless, it's well warranted to be on this list. Coming in at number 9 then, we have something a bit different. We have more of a personal favourite, and that's Bubble Bobble. So Bubble Bobble, as you probably already know, is a single screen kind of action platformer type of thing, where you gotta trap all of the monsters and in bubbles and then pop them before you move on. There's 100 levels. A lot of levels, and then unlike it has the 100 arcade levels, and it has an additional 100 levels. Ideally, you have to play this in 2-player mode to get the true ending and all that. Myself and Tony have done this. This is a very long haul when you're doing that. We had to use emulator save states. He loved Bubble Bubble because of Commodore and stuff like that, and I think he had it on a home computer, but he agreed it was a great version too, and we were playing. Ashley disagrees. She obviously preferred the Commodore version. Now, what was it? We're on 10, 9. We're on 8. We have Mickey Mouse Land of Illusion. You could very easily place Castle of Illusion in here. I kind of prefer Land of Illusion. I think the level design is a little better. I prefer the world map and how you kind of have to revisit levels slightly later on, and you can get a few more abilities. So it's just a little bit more adventuring into it, and I think it's just a little bit tighter in the gameplay department than Castle Illusion, but it's very marginal. Both of them are great games, and if you compare especially Castle of Illusion to, say, the Mega Drive equivalent, the Mega Drive version has fancier graphics, but the Master System version might actually play better. I go back to these more than I'll go back to the 16-bit version, but this was the era where Disney games were solid. You had Castle Illusion, Land of Illusion, and then the Master System, of course, you had Lucky Time Clipper. But this is my pick out of the Disney platformers. So 10, 9, 8, 7. We're on 7, and it's another personal favorite. It's Outrun. Obviously, Outrun, compromises had to be made when bringing it home from the Superscaler arcade system, but Sega did a very solid job. They made sensible cuts, shrinking down the sprites and reducing the number of cars and stuff like that. But the general feel of the game has been reasonably well maintained. and it's one of those things that I always just like to go back to for that 5 minute, 10 minute just gameplay experience, just a quick run through and be done. Now I remember describing this before. I think I was talking about music about it and basically saying how I found it relaxing, and people said that's odd because you're constantly getting a clock, a timer, and if you don't get to the next checkpoint, if you make one mistake, you might not make the next checkpoint. That's quite a stressful situation. And I said, I suppose it is. I don't know what about it that flies against that for me. I guess it is the combination of the music and the sound, which even on the Master System version 1, obviously not as good as the arcade, they did a very solid job. It definitely has that kind of feeling of cruising across the kind of coasts. So for the time frame, for an 8-bit port, it was great. And you compare it to other 8-bit racers, and it's right up there. It's a really enjoyable experience even today. And one of my earliest games, so that probably contributes to it. And number 6. And I wasn't sure about the placing of this. Again, I suppose it makes total sense. This is a very personal list. Most people probably would not have Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego as their number 6 game. But for me, it's one of the games I go back to the most. I was so intrigued by this cover. Master System games often have minimalist cover. Like even look, the Outrun cover is quite minimalist, and Outrun's not one of the worst covers. He had very cartoon Ferrari, but this one had more on it. You got this guy shooting the getaway car. You got a world map, and you had a full backside in English. And I didn't realize. I was like, wow, it's all a big lot of text. So in the store, I was able to pick this up and read it. And wow, there's a lot here instead of like one line, which is often like high action road adventure, test your driving skills, that type of stuff. It gave me a great feel for this must be a mystery that you're going to go on and solving these crimes. I didn't realize that this was pretty much an American import into my local store. I really don't know how that came about because I bought this in Ireland. And it was one I saved up for and whatnot. And initially, I thought I was a little disappointed. The graphics aren't the best. You have to have your detective's almanac while you're doing it and whatnot. But in the end, between playing with the likes of Tony and with other people, it's just something that you always just have a bit of a laugh on, even though it is an edutainment game. I never would have pictured an edutainment game so high into this list, but there you go. So we're into the top 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. And again, this pick, I wasn't sure. I nearly had Carmen above it. And that's Super Kickoff. This is the very first game I actually saved up my own money to purchase on the Master System. The rest had been kind of Christmas and birthday gifts. But this one, I saved up money and bought it myself. And obviously, it's a port of Kickoff or Super Kickoff. For those that don't know, it's an overhead kind of football game. Some of our friends like to call it ants on speed because they look like little ants, and it's fairly damn fast. You can slow it down though, thankfully, which is good for learning. If I hadn't saved up my money and I didn't have, a limited supply games, maybe I wouldn't have enjoyed this as much. But because I did, I spent a lot of time playing it, and I could basically play as every team, and I played as every team and won leagues and won, I just spent so many hours playing it. I have, incredible emotion attached to it. So it becomes hard to distinguish, is this actually a good 8-bit sports game or not? But I guess that's the point. These are personal lists. There's Sensible Soccer, Ultimate Soccer, a few other soccer games. But really, other than Sensible Soccer, I think nothing comes close on the Master System to touching Super Kickoff. But it was close between that and Carmen for the top 5. But now we're into the top 4, and to be honest, these next 4, they are all solid, solid games. First up is Shinobi. And again, like a lot of these others, I go back to this all the time. Yes, this is technically a port of the arcade, but they've changed it up. They've given you health bar instead of one-hit kills. They've tweaked level layouts. They've definitely made it more of a home experience. And I just love playing this game, especially, or rather, largely up till the 3rd boss. The first 3 worlds I just love playing, and I get to that 3rd damn boss, that Mandela thing, big wall of guys that comes and crushes you against electricity, and 99.9% of the time out of my playthroughs, that is where I get to, and that's the end of my game. I've completed this game, but very, very rarely. And most of the time, if I want to go further, I have to use the level select to go past it. But if you do that, you start off with your limited life and limited power. Whereas by and large, I can pretty much play the game and get up to the end of World 3 boss with full health and gone and all that sort of stuff. So that's the kind of flying ointment on this game. That boss. The rest, I can even go through the rest of the game, and I find while the difficulty curve does get harder and harder, it's somewhat fairer. The last boss is an absolute nightmare, but I'd accept it as the last boss. But that third boss is it's the only fly really in the ointment on this great game. Oh, and the fact that the ending, if you do beat the game, just is the black screen with the word game over, which is the exact same ending you get if you die. So yeah, just die to the third boss and say you beat the game. There you go. Either way, it's well worth playing. Now, we're into the top 3. I think a lot of people will guess the top 3, but in number 3, we have perhaps the system mascot. Some may have placed this one higher, Alex Kidd in Miracle World. It's a bit of a divisive game to some. A lot of people would compare it to Mario because, of course, Mass is the mascot, Nintendo mascot, platformer, that type of thing. But Alex Kidd is actually quite different. For a start, you do a vertical scrolling drop down in level 1. Then you do underwater swimming, horizontal scroll. That's quite different to World 1 and Mario. And level 2, you can get a vehicle and you do a motorbike game. And the boss on that is a Jenkin or rock, paper, scissors thing. These are very different games, and really they shouldn't be compared. Other than the fact that they use platform as a core element, they're very different. Alex Kidd throws a lot more variety into the mix than Mario did. Mario is a tighter platforming game, but Alex brings it, as I said, there's a lot more variety, so it's very interesting. And probably again now, if you want to go and play this, play it on Sega Ages on Nintendo Switch. You have your save states and your rewind, and you have a border that gives you a cheat sheet for the Jenkin matches, so you don't have to memorize them. Now, by and large, I do know them, so I can move through them. But those little kind of niceties completely free the game from that kind of older, kind of harder to get into, or harder to get to jump over. And I think when you have that, you can really appreciate the game for what it is. It's a really, really good 8-bit platformer. Number 2, the guy that dethroned Alex, shall we say, as the Sega mascot, and in some ways as the Master System mascot, because of course I'm picking Sonic 1, but there ended up being Sonic 2, Sonic Chaos, was that it? No, there's Dr. Batman's Mean Machine, Sonic Spinball. So there was quite a number of Sonic games right at the tail end. I was thinking Sonic Triple Trouble, but no, of course, I just made a cart mod of that, so that's different. But Sonic 1 is easily, in my opinion, the best of them. Ancient, the company that actually did a lot of work, Yuzo Koshiro's company did Streets of Rage 2 and a lot of that type of stuff. They really understood the platforming mechanics of Sonic and how they could tune that to the hardware. There was no point in trying to recreate full bore Sonic, loop-de-loops, all that sort of stuff, high speed, but lots of stuff on screen, lots of sprites. That wasn't going to happen on an 8-bit machine. So how do you distill the essence? You have a few places where you get your high speed, you get your loop, or your kind of slopes in Green Hill Zone, you get a bit of speed, you get a few areas where there's a number of rings. And they've compromised beyond that to make it more platform focused. You have some more enemies, that's probably a bit of a niggle. You have some, actually I would say the bonus game in this, the kind of pinball machine, is actually probably my favourite Sonic bonus game out of the entire series. You've got your half pipes, and certainly better than Sonic 1 rotating thing, which is headache inducing. This is way better. Of course, with Yuzo Koshiro, the music is great. Really, really is right up there pretty much with the 16-bit version. And the sad thing is, because it's an 8-bit game, most people probably haven't played this. Or if they have, they might have played the Game Gear version, but the Master System version with the wider resolution is a much better experience. And the graphics are actually slightly nicer too. I don't like the redrawn Game Gear sprites. So really, this is very much an underappreciated game. Does it have the kind of wow, element of Sonic on the Mega Drive? No, it doesn't. But it is really, well worth experiencing on its own. That's my number 2. Now, before we get on to number one, I had a few honourable mentions. And this is a bonus because these weren't going to be in the original script I had for the video that I never finished. I don't even think the top 10 were exactly the same. I said, okay, let's make it today. It's 2020. Let's do the top 10. So we'll just go quickly, quick words on these ones. Hang on. So again, I wouldn't have played that much until Retro Achievements. But this is actually a very fun little game. It was built in with most of the early Master System consoles. For a built-in game, it was actually really good. People kind of very dismissive because of, early games, primitive, whatnot. But as a racer, as an early game, it's really worth picking up and having a quick blast. I'll leave that one. Yeah, Golden Axe Warrior. Very much Sega's attempt to answer Zelda. Is it as good as Zelda? Not really, no. But again, you can look and take it on its own merit. The only thing I don't like about this is having to use the pause button to kind of bring up stuff, and it's more of an action button, and that is a limitation of the hardware as a whole. You really need, an emulate system where you can actually use pause as a proper button. But other than that, it's a decent long story, decent action, big world, a lot to do, a lot to see. Very much, if you're looking for an 8-bit Zelda alike, this is one to check out. Missile Defense 3D. This is so crazy. It is both a light gun game and a 3D glasses game. The only one that I'm aware of its kind from the era, or possibly up until the new VR stuff, possibly, and even then, I don't know that they really do light guns. It's just so unique. There's not much to it, but the fact that you have to use the goggles and you can see the missiles sort of coming out of the screen at you and you have to shoot them, it's worth trying for that. Although it's very hard to try it these days because you can't really emulate it all that well. Tom and Jerry, the movie. Most people actually consider this to be a terrible game. I actually quite like it. I think it's well animated, and if you're able to attune to the movements of Tom, you're Tom and you're trying to chase Jerry, in each level, he gets away, but you've got to catch him and blah blah. And it's a short game. There's only 4 levels or 5 levels. I can't remember what it is. They're saying 6. Was it really 6? Some of them are so short they're over in like 20 seconds. And it is about learning to kind of level a bit and how you can do shortcuts to catch Jerry before the end and avoid his traps. I just enjoyed it, even though it's a small, simple game. And then finally, for the honorable mentions, we have RoboCop versus Terminator. This is one of those games where the Mega Drive version is obviously better, but they're throwing so much on screen and actually pulling most of it off reasonably well in terms of action, bigger sprites, a lot of enemies, bullets. The 8-bit machine, you think, should not be doing this, but it actually handles most of it very well. There's a bit of flicker, but it's really quite a solid little game. So there, my honorable mentions. On to number 1. I don't think anyone will be particularly surprised by this. It is Wonder Boy 3, The Dragon's Trap. This wasn't even a bait or a thought or anything like that. It was so easily going to be my number 1 game. And when we've done this type of topic and there's been polls on things like Sega 8-bit forums and stuff, Sonic 1, Alex Kidd Miracle World, and Wonder Boy 3, they are basically in a 3-way tie for the top. And there's usually a vote or 2 in between it. That's it. It's so tight between them. And for me, it just always goes to Wonder Boy. But any of these could be number 1. Wonder Boy 3 was the first game where I realized it could actually be more than just go from A to B platforming. Because I had experienced simple platformers up till then and shooting games and stuff like that, but this introduced the kind of concept of Metroidvania, which didn't have a term at the time, but the fact that different animal forms had different capabilities and you could go back to different areas and upgrade, get better weapons, and compared to today's Metroidvania, is obviously not as convoluted or complex or anything like that, but for the time frame, it is absolutely stellar and still holds up incredibly well. There was the Switch and PlayStation 4 and whatever other systems are on. A remake of this not that long ago, Wonder Boy 3 by Lizard Cube. A fantastic game. Well worth recommending. And if you don't have a Master System and you're in any way curious, you should absolutely try out the remake. Because one, you can tell it actually really does capture the essence of the 8-bit game perfectly. But it also lets you have the modern graphics and modern sound. and it has those kind of niceties and better saving. It's also the only game that I know of that is cross-platform between the Switch, the PlayStation 4, and the Sega Master System. So that's got to be worth some brownie points. And if you really want, you can actually turn off the modern graphics and sound and play it just like the Master System with widescreen support only. So it's brilliant. And it's brilliant because it's based on a brilliant game. I go back to this still regularly, clear it regularly. It is definitely my favourite Master System game. Anyway, I do apologise for taking 4 years, I think nearly, to get to part 2 of this. But there we have it. That's my top 10, my top 20 Master System games. I hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you again soon. Bye for now.